Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and since I talked about The Fly, which, like I said, this is a classic film, why not The Fly 2? Which I gotta say, 20th Century Fuckface, you actually gave us a really good DVD, which I'm surprised, because I don't understand why you can't do that for more movies. It's weird, True Lies in the US is bare bones, but we got a 2 disc of The Fly 2. But I like this film. Definitely not as good as the original, but I like The Fly 2. It's actually directed by Chris Wallace. Now, Chris Wallace was a makeup guy. This is a guy who, I think he worked on Gremlins, and I mean, Chris Wallace has worked on a lot of stuff. And I think this is why he could not work on Gremlins 2. Because I think he helped work on effects for The Fly. And it's like, hey, we like what you did, man. We like what you did on working on the effects on this. Do you want to direct this one? And again, I think that's why he could not help do effects on the Gremlins 2, because I think Gremlins 2, like Chris Wallace, I think did effects for the first film, but I think Rick Baker, I may be wrong, I may be completely wrong, but I think Rick Baker helped on the sequel, Gremlins 2, which came out in 1990. And, it takes time to do effects, and he had his hands full with directing the film. But story by Mick Garris, screenplay by Mick Garris, Jim Ken Wheat, and Frank Darabont. So you have a lot of noticeable people doing the screenplay. Now, The Fly 2, I know the opening is pretty much supposed to be Gina Davis's character, but Gina Davis, didn't want to come back because, she was a little iffy on the pregnancy stuff. And to be honest, I don't blame her because, in all effect, it kind of makes you feel crappy about the first one because Gina Davis's character gives birth and pretty much dies at the beginning of the. I mean, it's not Gina Davis, but it's her character. She gives birth and she dies. So I'm like, well, fuck. The ending of the first one was like, wow, that's even more shitty. So I guess I don't want to think of that part, but that sucks. But gives birth to this child that this group takes in, and I know they're really big assholes. At least in my opinion, the bad guys here, where he's raised up, and of course, as a kid, like he sticks his hand, like all the flies sort of go on his hand, like his hand against the glass, and he's pretty much just raised up, grown up to Eric Stoltz, who meets this girl, Daphne Zuniga, which I'm guessing Mel Brooks, who's a producer on this again. Mel Brooks had worked with her on Spaceballs. So he's like, hey, I know Daphne. Well, let's have her be the female lead in this. And meet up, and they have a relationship. And they find out some certain things going on. I know one thing I really enjoyed was very heartfelt, makes you feel bad, is Eric Stoltz's character had this dog which they experimented on, and it grew to this very fucked up creation. Not a mean creation, not a vicious creation either, just sort of a very sad and almost pathetic thing. And it's a very sad scene, I will admit, where, Eric Stoltz has to get this stuff and put it across his mouth. And again, not a mean or vicious, it just, barely alive, but still nice, and puts the, over the dog creature to let her go to sleep. And I thought, wow, that's really nice idea, and makes you really feel bad, makes you really hate the bad guys more. Um, and I will say they really did that scene well. And it's like, I just that idea of, oh, you're not supposed to kill dogs. Well, they didn't care in this film, and they went with it, and made for a very memorable sequence. Yeah, this film is a 4.7 IMDb. It doesn't deserve to be that low. I mean, come on. I think this is a pretty damn decent sequel, and it's a fun creature flick. The bad guy, Bartok, played by Lee Richardson. This guy did a good job as the bad guy, the human bad guy. Well, yeah, the bad guy. And basically, Eric Stoltz starts changing. Uh, Daphne, Zuniga and them have a relationship, and they know these guys are up to no good. They actually visit John Getz, who was in the first film, gives him, of course, his hand and leg are fucked up from the previous film. And granted, a problem with the film is that at times it feels like they're just redoing the first film again, because you have a guy who's changing into the Fly, and then you have a girl who is trying to help out but can really do nothing about it, and the guy changes and becomes a creature, and the love story. And the thing is, the love story is not as good as the first film right off the bat. It's not as good as the first film. Eric Stoltz is okay, but he's not one of those actors I love. But yeah, I think he's an okay actor. I don't know, he's just not one of those actors that I love tremendously. For instance, if they had gotten, say, James Spader, I'd be like, all right, yeah, I really like James Spader. Vincent D'Onofrio. Vincent D'Onofrio was the first choice. But the screen test, I guess, didn't go well. But Vincent D'Onofrio, he would have been very cool. I guess Keanu Reeves turned down the role of Martin Brundle. That would have been a little bit interesting. Yeah, Jeannie Davis turned it down because, her character just got killed off very early. Yeah, I don't blame her. But Vincent D'Onofrio, that would have been more interesting. Or I keep mentioning like James Spader. I think that would have been cool. James Spader. I like James Spader as an actor. Like Jat's Back. I reviewed Jat's Back. It's on the channel, and that's a very solid film. But Eric Stoltz is okay, and I did Daphne Zuniga. She's okay, but the love story is just not as strong as the first film. You've already noticed the love story is just not that strong. But what the film does work as is a creature feature. When he becomes the creature, yeah, it's not like the first film, but I still think it's a pretty damn decent looking creature. It's a damn decent looking creature. No, they don't have it here. Yeah, they don't have it in there. I was hoping they had it, but I still think, yeah, decent looking creature, and starts fucking up the asshole Bartok's men. Who can forget that scene with, knocks the guy and the elevator's coming down and crushes that guy's head like a grape. You're like, oh shit! Spits acid on a guy's face and the face melts. I mean, it's gory. It's definitely R-rated. It's a fun creature feature flick. And you really hate the bad guys, and it's definitely a much more upbeat ending. Happy ending. I mean, who doesn't mind a happy ending? I like happy endings, especially with women. But the score is done by Christopher Young. Really good score, once again. Like the previous film had a good score, this has a good score. And, gives Bartok his just desserts. Just like, what happened with the dog kind of happens to him. But, Eric Stoltz is able to be human again and be with Daphne Zuniga. The makeup effects are top notch. I mean, you got a makeup effects, special effects guy directing the film, so of course the makeup effects, special effects, going to be good. And I like the creature because it was not just a rip off of the first film, but it was kind of similar. It's kind of like this, but it's better looking than this. But this is kind of like what the Fly 2 creature looks like, but the Fly 2 creature, I think, looks better than this. Like, I always thought this looked like the inbred cousin of the Fly 2. But it kind of has this look. But it looks better than that. But it has that similar look to it as well. But Eric Stoltz and Daphne Zuniga, I know one thing they didn't like on the when they were talking about the features is they didn't like the marketing where they said like father, like son. I think that was perfect marketing because let's face it, you have a guy turn into a fly creature, and then you have a love story. You don't think of the first film. I hate to break it, you are going to think about the first film. I do remember that cover, seen on VHS covers back in the day. So I mean, the Bartok and his cronies, sort of evil corporation types, gave the film a little bit of a different feel to it. Uh, the third act is really enjoyable when he turns to a creature and starts fucking people up. It becomes, a fun creature feature with good special effects and gory death scenes. It's a happy ending, so it's not a rip-off of the ending of the first film. Christopher Young does a good job with the score. But I think, again, I guess the problem is Eric Stoltz and Daphne Zuniga, they're okay. I don't think they're terrible. They're definitely just not as good as Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum. The love story is not as good. I mean, I wonder if they just dropped the love story, and, whether it be a friend or whether it be, okay, they're just friends, and not concentrate so much on the love story, which, to be honest, I don't think these two really had too much chemistry with each other. So I do think the love story is the weakest part of this film, and again, maybe because I'm just not the biggest fan of Eric Stoltz. Like, again, he's okay, but Vincent D'Onofrio would have been more interesting. James Spader would have been more interesting. Um, Hell, Keanu Reeves, he would have been more interesting to me than Eric Stoltz. Like, I was glad that he didn't finish Back to the Future and Michael J. Fox got it. Because Michael J. Fox made that movie his own, but still, I'm not really downing the film too much because they were okay. The guy who played Bartok was an asshole and he needed to be. It was a decent pace, but what really sold it was the third act become a very fun creature feature. Great score by Christopher Young. Chris Wallace did a decent job directing. He directed another film called The Vagrant with Bill Paxton, which I enjoyed a lot. I think I did a review for that. I think that review's still up on the channel. You guys can find it on the channel. The Vagrant with Bill Paxton. But I'm basically thinking if I'm missing anything that I wanted to talk about. So other than the two leads, they're okay. They're just not outstanding, but they're okay. They do what they need to do. The love story isn't the greatest. But again, still fun creature feature stuff. It doesn't deserve the low ratings that it's gotten. It's not one of the worst sequels of all time. I like the film. I think it's an entertaining film. It's definitely not as good as this. It is a step down from The Fly, but still entertaining time. I mean, come on, Elevator smashes a guy's head like a grapefruit, and creature spits on a guy's face and melts off, and, the bad guy gets his comeuppance, and there's some heart to it with that dog scene, that dog being turned into this creature, a lovable creature, but just pathetic and heartbreaking scene, and that's where you can kind of root for Eric Stoltz. I almost want to say Eric Roberts, but Eric Stoltz's character. Like, that was, like, more heartbreaking. Really, almost more heartbreaking than him actually turning to the creature. Like, I was more almost heartbroken that the dog turned to a creature than Eric Stoltz. But I'm harping on the two actors. Like, I don't mean to, but they're okay. I think they do a serviceable job. They're okay, but good makeup effects, fun creature feature in the third act, and it's not a bad movie. That's what I don't read. It's not a bad movie. This is not a bad film. This is an 80s film that I'd rather see more movies like this than horror films of today, like fucking House at the End of the Street, Around the Corner, Up an Ass. I'd rather see more of the Fly 2s. So make more of the Fly 2s and less of House at the End of Your Ass, or whatever the fuck the movie is. But anyway, The Fly 2, it's not a bad movie. Not as good as the original, but it's still a good one. So thanks for watching, and take care. Later.